This is Marshall Lee of DonkeyJawProjects.com, and this what you're watching right now is the Early Bird Artcast. How you guys doing? Um, Today, I don't really have like a specific topic. So if you have any thoughts or questions, please throw them into the chat. We'll be just chatting for a little bit, maybe about a half an hour here, as I work on the Legends of the Lone Wolf anthology comic that I'm making with Doug Garrett. My portion with him is called Sword of the Samurai. And let me bring that screen up here. And who knows, maybe a friend or two will pop in at some point. I do put this link out to people, a select group of people who I know would be fun to hang out with. And on the YouTube videos, I wouldn't mind expanding that group as well, because, I like to have different people on and stuff. A lot of times I have Russ on, which is awesome. I'm always happy to have him on. He's a great co-host and stuff. I'd be happy to have him on every time if I can, because he's rad. And plus, he makes my channel look good with his awesome art. I should mention, definitely go to Comic Book Black Belt, comicbookblackbelt.com. Check out Russ's stuff. Sign up for his newsletter. And that way you can get to know more about what's going on with his upcoming comic. Also subscribe to his YouTube at Comic Book Black Belt. He's just got a lot of cool stuff going on, and something really cool is he was on the Artcasters. He did something that I haven't done since way back in the days. He's gone on the Artcasters last night, and I was just listening to it while I was setting up, and it already sounds like an awesome discussion with Scott Circlin and Joshua Kemble. So check that out. I have been on the Artcasters before, but when I was on the Artcasters, it was a whole different world. That was when Jeff Lafferty was heading it up, and he was doing it almost on a daily basis during the daytime, and I was on it a few times. But now that it's on during the time I'm sleeping every night, kind of hard to be on the Artcasters. So, hey, everybody in the chat, Grim Squeaker was the first one here, just so everybody knows. He or she was the first one here. So hello, thank you for being the first. It's always fun. Comic Book Black Belt, as we were just speaking, Mr. Russ, he is here in the chat. Hello, dude. And then we got Star Super. That is super. Superstar, Star Super. I like that. All right, so I have to get some work done on this Lone Wolf thing. This week has been crazy. If you notice, I had like a nice little run there last week. I was like, for like a good 7 days or so, I had a video every single day, which was pretty awesome. And then after Monday, I haven't been able to put out a video until right now. So we've gone 3 full days without a YouTube video, and that just makes me antsy as heck. I like to be very prolific. I like to be very busy on YouTube and on my comic. Those are my main things outside of, living life and doing the things I have to do, and, having family stuff and all that. So, it's been busy. I've been at work trying to I've had a lot of overtime at work. It's been kind of nuts, and it's been hard to even get to the comic. I guess I should say, if you want to find me, you can find me at DonkeyJawProjects.com. I shouted out Russ. He's not even here, and I didn't even shout my own stuff out. So DonkeyJawProjects.com if you didn't already know. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter. You're going to MarshallLee_DJP. So that is awesome, and you can find all my stuff there. So let's see, what else do we have here? So, one thing I wanted to touch on a little bit is uh, in the last live stream that Russ and I did together, right at the tail end when I was closing up, somebody hit me with a question and I couldn't answer it because we were like literally saying the last things. And one thing is we actually had a video about this recently. So that person, if you're still wondering, they were asking, how do you find an artist for your project? Um, and so we did make a video all about it, but I'll briefly talk about it here a little bit. Again, I don't have any problem re-answering questions. Sometimes I think of new things that are helpful too. So, it's always fun and probably good to kind of revisit questions, even if you've already kind of covered it. So I find coloring very confusing, by the way. So finding an artist for your project, well, that's the thing. I'll tell you one way to find an artist for a project is save up a lot of money and pay the artist. That's probably the best way. And if you do that and you have that kind of good money, you can kind of have your pick. Um, so that's kind of cool. And see, it's hard to figure out which layer to work on when I'm doing this. All right. um, so yeah, I don't know. I definitely recommend paying artists, even if being committed to try to pay the artist, because it's just a lot of work. Because the thing is I know sometimes you can kind of come into these situations with like collaborating and stuff like that, which is totally cool. And you know, I think you still need to be committed to try your best to pay an artist whenever you can. If you do like a crowdfunder or whatever, like I mean, I've got different situations with different artists and collaborators and stuff, and some situations it is kind of you know either me working for little to no money, or they are. But those situations are special situations. This is like when if you like this is when you like have built up a relationship with somebody. So I actually was approached recently by someone, a very nice person, asking me if I'm trying to find a writer to work with. And the thing is I'm open to different things, but I have a lot of projects on my plate at the moment. um, but also, it's different, when different people approach, if I don't know you at all, like if this is the first time we're interacting, unfortunately, I'm going to be probably a lot less receptive to that kind of thing. Not that I'm offended by the asking. I'm actually flattered by the fact that somebody would think of me. Um, Totally cool to approach me in that way. But just know, like, to get into a situation like that, unless you're like saying, "Hey, I want to hire you." Like, if you approach me like that, that's a little bit different. Um, but even still, like, it really does have a lot to do with relationship. Um, so you know, because even if you are getting hired, you want to work with somebody who you trust, for one. You want to work with somebody who you have a good chemistry with and who you think you'd work well with, and you wouldn't have too many hiccups and stuff. Somebody who seems like you would get along, really, because these, even if it's a business relationship, it's still a relationship. um, and these business relationships, we've seen in the history of comics, business relationships turn sour, or creative relationships turn sour. I'm I'm a huge fan of Image Comics, and they did some pretty awesome, groundbreaking things. They had the ability to do it when other people have tried it and hadn't been able to do it. They were able to pull it off, which is really amazing and really cool. But those relationships, eventually, a lot of them disintegrated, and they had problems. I think a lot of them have made amends now, but there were definitely some rough times for the founding Image guys. So it's all about relationship, even if it's in a paid gig. Oh, it looks like we have a friend here popping in. What is up? Do you hear me? Do I hear you?
Hello?
No, I don't hear you, Mr. Russ.
Can you hear me? No. There we go. Let's go. Can you hear me now?
Let us see. I wonder.
Can you hear me now?
I think. Well, Russ is here.
Can
A
you hear me
silent Russ
now?
at the moment, but
Um,
hopefully he's waving.
can you hear me now?
Hopefully we can get the sound going. Your mic isn't muted,
Can you hear me now?
so that's one thing. I wonder if there's anything I can go
Can
into
you hear me
settings
now?
if there's anything
Hello?
that I can do. I don't think so. I can only um,
Can you hear me now?
control my own settings. So yeah, I don't know. Keep I guess
Can
playing
you hear me
around
now?
with the stuff and see if we can get your audio back. I'll keep an eye and see if there's anything I need to do. So let's see what the
Oh.
chat's doing at the moment.
Can you?
Yanimal's in here. Hola, what's going on? Um, you should definitely check out Yanimal's channel if you like. Seeing an artist travel to awesome places and like just show his it's like a almost like
Hello?
a travel vlog, but he makes comics too, so you get to see both of those awesome things. You should definitely check out his channel. Just type in Yanimal, Yannemal, and you will find him. And he's got awesome videos. He's also done the 100 Days Making Comics. He's working on his personal comic Phosphor, and it's kind of like a mix between it's kind of like Aliens in some ways. It's got that kind of thing going for it, and obviously his own take on it. It's a very different story, but at the same time, it's very much inspired by like Aliens movies. So definitely check his stuff out. He's an amazing artist. Hingling, Dave Hingley is in here. He's been making mini comics like a madman. He sent a few of them to me. Thanks, dude. Um, Yotan 3000, what's up? How you doing? Jetpack Man 01, why are you
Ah.
streaming so late? Well, for me, I'm streaming so early. That's why I call it the Early Bird Artcast. We're getting the worms here. So for me, it's 5:24
Ooh.
in the morning.
Can you hear
I
me in the
do this
chat?
before thing. For him, it's let's see. On the Artcasters, they were saying it was like 5 in the morning for him. So at this point, it's probably mid late morning. I'm assuming maybe 10 or 11. Um,
Okay.
he's nodding. Let's see. Stay Puffed
Cool.
Marshmallow Man. What is up? I loved you in Ghostbusters. You were awesome.
What a fantastic name.
Yanimal. Let's see. Oh, somehow I lost the feed went kind of quick. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I'd love to answer them. I've got a little bit more time. Yanimal says sound is good for us. So you're hearing Russ? Is that what you're saying?
That's weird.
Russ, we can hear you ever so clearly. Oh, then the problem is mine. What in the world? Hello, hello. Maybe. Oh, now I hear you.
Can you hear me
That's
now?
weird. Yes, I can. All right. How you doing,
Hello.
man?
Good morning. Good morning. It's still morning in both places. Is that right?
That's good at least. I
Yeah.
mean, if we're up early enough here, which almost nobody is, but I am, then it's still morning for you.
Yeah. It's a ridiculous time in the morning for you. But I've already done a show this morning with Scott and Josh, so I thought I saw you and I thought I'd jump in and say hi. Not that I'm stalking you or anything.
I love to have you on, man. To me. I feel like you're like my new co-host. I love
Yeah, I like that. I feel loved and respected now.
it. Awesome. Um, you know what? I was curious. I had a couple topics that kind of came up while we were talking last time, and I'm trying to think if I want to bring it up or if I want to make a complete show for some of these. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just keep riffing, and because there's one that I kind of want to do a complete video about, and the other one, um, you know what? I'll ask you one that we've already kind of touched on a little bit, um, well, probably a lot, but what would you say is like something that the newbies, the people who who haven't been around, to see the Bronze Age happen, or even just haven't looked into the Bronze Age, what are some things that we can learn as comic creators and maybe even comic readers, but mostly comic creators from the things that happen in the Bronze Age type of comics?
I would say storytelling.
Hmm.
I would say it's the best example of storytelling that I've seen in superhero comics. Manga does it its own way, and there are European comics that work very well. But I would say the Bronze Age of superhero comics, which is basically what you're talking about when we talk
Hmm.
about Bronze Age, it's just so well done. Storytelling is key. There's not too much text, so it's show don't tell. But I mean, it doesn't mean that there isn't plenty to read. You just get a really good combination of both. I think we spoke about this before. We have a really nice balance of text and action so that you can get into the story, but at the same time, it really bumps along at quite a pace. I've got this stuff here. There you go. This good stuff. You can see it looks quite
Here, hold up. Let me make your
quite
screen
dense.
bigger.
Here you go. It looks quite dense.
Oh,
Just turn the
okay.
light on, and it's just great stuff. I mean that's just there's no flashy panels. It's not overdone. Don't get me wrong. I do like the occasional fun with panels, like putting them in weird angles and popping things out. I think that's all part of the fun. But something that the Bronze Age did so very well was tell stories, just beautifully. And actually, people like Neil Adams played with panels, and obviously Steranko, they played with all kinds of panels. But again, it was clear storytelling, even though they played with lots of design aspects. So I would say that's what really jumps out for me is storytelling. So it
Mm.
doesn't rely overly on a script. It gives you a good balance of both. It's a personal opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that era kind of has a few different influences, and I think partially it was coming out of maybe the more Marvel method type of way
Hmm.
of doing things, and but it was starting to innovate and get a little bit more sophisticated at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, so we were heading towards things like full scripts that Alan Moore might have been doing,
Mm.
or some of these other writers, but we weren't quite there yet, and it was just a lot of comic storytelling fun, from
Yeah.
what I remember. And I think one thing too is, I feel like there was more of an emphasis on, especially when Jim Shooter was doing his thing and stuff. It's like, this comic, every comic might be some kid's, first comic, and so it's not, it's it
They
was more
had to,
focused on telling a full story in each
yeah,
book
had to be
as opposed.
accessible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
And you didn't have to, read 10 comics to get the full story from different, different
no,
titles and stuff. You could just pick up any issue and for the most part, read one story, or maybe it's continued in two or three surrounding it, but
mm,
that's about it.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think that's a big advantage. Something that I actually feel like needs to make a huge resurgence.
yes,
Personally, I feel like comics are better that way. I don't know. I mean, you could do them anyway, really, but I think that that kind of comic would do well today because I think a lot of people are um, kind of fed up with the way they have been doing it, lately.
yeah.
So,
I think there's something to be said for. I mean, floppies worked for a long time, from month to month. They were pulp entertainment, and you could pick them up easily and cheaply and keep a story going and have fun with them.
mhm,
But when they left the newsstands, it was more difficult to get hold of them for your average person. And so some of that was lost. And so you're at a point now where you're sort of depending on the niche market for your floppies, and the general market out in bookstores and what have you. They're going for graphic novels or trade paperbacks collections, and you can see from that aspect, the buying habits, that's where people can jump on easier. But the trouble is what's happening is some of the bigger publishers are now understanding that and making short-term stories, maybe mini-series or whatever, or a short arc, just so that it can fit in a trade paperback and they can resell that in a bookstore. And
yeah,
you're kind of losing the art of the floppy. Kind of, and when I say the art, I mean the art of storytelling, in a kind of a pulp, sequential way. One book, one month to the next. And I think that's a bit sad because there's something wonderful about that, about the way the story is there and about a character. That's how these characters became iconic, because they were ever present. So you could go and buy a comic, and even if you weren't the kind of person that followed the story every month, the comics were always there on the racks, and you could pick another one up and fill in real quick. And there was that art of telling like a single story at the same time they were telling a continuing saga.
mm,
And I don't think it kind of works in the same way anymore, just from what I've seen of comics recently. It's not to say it's not still there or could work. I think it can, but so I think you're right. It's going to be easier for the normies, for people that you want to get out to, not just us guys who love comics, but just the general public, to pick up a single issue, or to pick up, say, a one shot or a small graphic novel and get a whole story in one bite. And that's how you hook people into going and buying more comics, I think. I think
yeah, yeah,
Alterna are doing a great job getting it. I think Peter made some announcements about their distribution process. So that I just think he's doing the right things. It's about getting comics out to everyone, literally. When you say
mm,
comics are for everyone, they truly are. And it's if we can hook people in with single issues or with one shots and then get them to buy more, that's great. But just the whole storytelling. We were talking to Scott and Josh earlier about this. It's trying to get kids, and it's not comics aren't for kids. Comics are for everyone. Yeah, so you shouldn't talk down to people in a comic. Talk down to your readers in a kid's comic or a young person's comic. You should just make the same comics. And back to what you were saying earlier about the Bronze Age. That's what they did in the Bronze Age. They spoke to everyone, never
mm,
spoke down to you. And if there was a word you didn't understand, you went and looked it up and you added it to your vocabulary, and it meant that you were more prepared to read novels and literature later on. So yeah, just get more people in, get more people in to read. Don't talk down to them. Provide entertainment, and Yeah, I think at the moment, like you're saying, one shots and single stories can really hook people in. Hopefully, so
Yeah,
they get the habit.
yeah, they get the bug. And it's funny because I was watching one
Ooh,
of Peter Simity's videos, and I forget um, which one it was,
it's gone
but
on the
one of his recent ones, and he was saying that um, you know what, I'm trying to think now. I kind of lost my train of thought, but he was saying something about kind of what you were saying that I actually always say all the time. I can't even think what it was, but I had a point, and then it just fell off a bridge there. But let's see. We got some other people here. Robert Johnston, friend of the show for sure. Him and I are going to be doing a cool video series soon, which is I'm really looking forward to. How you doing, man? He says it's late night for him. Let's see. What
can't
else?
hear.
Oh, you don't hear me?
Lost my hearing.
Uh oh.
I'm gonna,
I'm not sure why. Um, let's see. Uh, Dave Hingley. Hi, Robert. Don't skip on sleep. They're talking to each other. Yanimal's asking, by the Bronze Age, we mean the 60s? Yeah, I think so. Let's see. I think it's like 60s to 80s, I would say. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. Um, the first comics I saw was SpongeBob. That's awesome. There's a lot of different entry points for people, and I know a lot of people have come into comics through, like Sonic the Hedgehog did like a comic series, and back in the days, a lot of people were coming into comics through, Star Wars or Star Trek comics, things like that. There's always been these kind of popular IP, intellectual properties that people have found their way into comics with, and I think all those are awesome and valid, and they've made some really cool things. My entryway was my dad showed me his old Superman and some Batman comics, and then eventually I found out there was a comic shop, and it was over after that. um, let's see. Robert says, I thought 80s comics were my start. Justice League, Batman, and the Outsiders. Awesome. Awesome. Um, let's see. Jetpack Man says, I really like one shots. And, oh, there he is. He's back.
I'm back. I don't know what happened. There was a gremlin.
um, so, Yanamo was asking, is by the Bronze Age, do we mean the 60s? And I said, I think it's like somewhere around from the 60s to the 80s, somewhere around there.
Is it Dave in the chat said 70 to 86?
Did
Which
he?
I think
Oh,
he's
yeah.
pretty much spot on with. I think the Silver Age lasted up until the end of the 60s,
Oh,
and we
okay.
had people like Neil Adams and Steranko and John Buscema coming on board, moving into the 70s.
Gotcha.
But you could say that there was this delineation between the two, but I felt it was kind of like an expansion. It was just like how it moved on. There's a great book, Silver Age of Comics by Arlen Schumer. I've done a review of it on my channel, and that's a great book. It's got some wonderful artwork in it, and it talks about some of the ideas that for instance, people like Neil Adams brought to the table. His wonderful work on Dead Man and what have you. So, but just just the way books are done, back then. I mean, I was reading Fantastic Four in the late 70s when I first started buying comics as a kid, and they were reprints from the 60s, as I understand it,
Oh, wow.
to start off with, because it's Kirby stuff. So, yeah, just the whole I talk about the Bronze Age, but there's got to be a bleed into the Silver Age, and also there's a bleed into what they would call the Dark Ages, I suppose, in the 90s. There's some wonderful artwork and stories from the 90s, but I just my heart belongs to those stories from from say, around the Bronze Age.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think I just they're just such a fun era of comics. Jetpack Man, I was saying before, he was saying I really like one shots, graphic novels because they're so much easier for me to get into than longer stories. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, I like that's the thing. I mean, as a kid, um, reading these comics. First of all, I was reading a lot of Image comics, which you could debate if they had any story at all. And then uh, then also other comics though before that I was reading the stuff that the Image guys were making. I was a fan of them before Image started, and you know and other comics too. And my biggest thing was I felt like I was never getting like enough story, I guess. I wanted, I think I craved having a full story in a comic. And you know it tends to be the way it's been kind of since then till now. A lot of times in comics you just get really a snippet of a story and it's just not enough.
Unless it's a Bendis story.
Yeah, I don't know if I've even ever read his stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, I've read some earlier stuff. I've got a couple of graphic novels or trade paperbacks that are quite nice. But again, I was attracted by the artwork. I think artwork, and this is what you're told by submissions editors, is draw panels, draw pages of story, because we don't want to see pinups. And yet, probably started mid 90s, as you were saying, you're not getting as much story in your comic, and it's because the art kind of took over, and it was all about the artist. With some obviously some well-deserved praise for a lot of those artists like Jim Lee and what have you, but they'd become the superstar and the story was taking a back seat, and it was all about the amazing art, and there were so many splash pages and big panels, and that's the thing about Bronze Age and Silver Age art, is you got fabulous artwork that drove the story. You didn't get just fabulous artwork, and it wasn't driving the story as such. It was more about the visuals, and the great thing about the older comics is they're a purer form. I'm not trying to get too anal about this, but they were more along the lines of telling a story rather than just being an amazing spectacle. And I suppose it's like that with cinema as well, isn't it? You can get that way. Michael Bay, is it Michael Bay and Transformers? Is that his name? Bay? Yeah. I mean, I actually really enjoy those films because I'm very shallow and I like really really basic movies that just impress me visually. But I can understand why people would get upset about them because they're just the visuals. So and that's, I think, some of that it was with comics where it was kind of overblown, and there's an overhang of that in today's comics, I think. And story should always be king, always be the top of the tree.
Oh, story should always be king.
Sure, story. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely, I would agree with that. So Robert Johnston said that he feels like he could just listen to Russ narrate a documentary about comics, and I think we need to make that happen because you're totally right. Acid Lace, how you doing? Acid Lace says, I just reread a Beatrix Potter book, and that vocabulary was very robust, but her books aren't too much for preschoolers since they've been beloved for generations. I'm not sure who that is, to be honest.
What, Beatrix Potter?
Yeah.
She's very quite famous. Peter Rabbit.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's the original author. I think that's right, isn't it? Beatrix Potter, Peter Rabbit. I might be showing my ignorance here. I'm trying to think of Enid Blyton. Enid Blyton was Famous Five and that kind of stuff, and I think Beatrix Potter was all the animals. And yeah, it's good kids' books, but good solid stories. Again, earlier on, Josh was talking about reading Treasure Island to his kids, and that's quite an intense book. It's got lots of pirates and violence and adventure, but it was still effectively a great kid's story because it was all about the adventure. And I think, just as he was saying, I agree with him. I think sometimes readers, younger readers, can be cosseted, talked down to, instead of just letting them, let the real world kind of. That's what the stories are about. That's what fairy tales are there for. That's what adventure tales are there for. They're kind of prepping them for real life. Not that you're going to be a pirate, but that there's shocks in store for you, and you never know what's around the next corner. And that's what adventure tales are all about. So if you water down the action, if you water down the adventure of a kid's book so that it's nice and soft, then you're kind of missing a trick, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's something to that for sure. Well,
Thanks,
much
Dave.
as what's that?
I was just saying thanks to Dave. He was just confirming.
Oh, cool. Yeah, thank you everybody in the chat. You guys are having great little conversations in there. I will say it is unfortunately that time again to get going for me. I wish I could continue for longer. I'd much rather be doing this than going to work, but alas, the side hustle of the day job calls and beckons. So once again, Mr. Russ, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Comic Book Black Belt, the YouTube channel, or comicbookblackbelt.com or russleach.com. You can find more about my book on onlydeathcansavus.com, and I have an email list. Just click on the links at any of my sites and you'll be able to join up for that. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, that kind of stuff. Just look me up.
Awesome. And once again, you guys know where you can find me, donkeyjawprojects.com, marshall_lee_DJP on Instagram and Twitter. I've also been on LinkedIn lately, so search me there. I don't even know how to find me there, but I'm there. Russ knows I'm there. That's about the only person who knows I'm there, but hey. So other than that, thank you everybody for watching and being a part of the chat. I see more people coming in and chatting. Unfortunately, we do have to go, but you guys rock. Anybody in watching this later on, thank you for watching, and we will talk to you on the next video. All right, later.